Time Walk with Me.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Time Walk with me. I am the Time Walker, and if you liked the movie Ratatouille, this deck is for you. The commander is Old Flitterfang. He is a 3/4 rat fairy with flying who costs 4 generic and 1 black mana to summon. At the beginning of each end step, every player's end step that is, if a creature died this turn, you get a food token. Old Flitterfang can trigger his own ability by paying 2 generic and 1 black mana and sacrificing a creature to give him +2/+2 until end of turn. Part of this deck's strategy is to kill creatures and get food. I don't know where Flitterfang gets the food, probably the grocery store or maybe his own garden at home. Nowhere gross. Abyssal Gorestalker. This requires you to sacrifice 2 creatures as well, but since you're the one deciding when to cast this, you can wait until it hurts everyone else more than you. Hex. Since this doesn't say destroy up to 6 creatures, you have to make sure there are exactly 6 creatures you want to destroy, or you'll end up having to destroy creatures you want to keep. Live or Die. This is a really cool modal spell that does one of 2 opposite things. You get a creature back, or someone loses a creature. Lux Cannon. Every 4 turns, you can destroy whatever you want, even a land. Murderous Rider / Swift End. 3 mana and 2 life to destroy a creature or planeswalker is a very good deal. Then you can cast it as a creature that doesn't completely die, though going to the bottom of your library is kinda worse. It's easier to get a creature back from the graveyard than from the bottom of your library, but whatever, this is here for Swift End. Murderous Rider is just a bonus. Patron of the Vein. This creature kills something of an opponent's and then triggers its last ability from that, meaning that for 6 mana, you get a 5/5 flyer that kills something when it ETBs. If you have other vampires out, it pumps them up too, but that's just icing on the cake. Pylon. You can tap your creatures to help cast this, it destroys a creature or a planeswalker, and it makes you surveil too. This is a great card. Ravenous Chupacabra. Chupacabra means goat sucker, but this doesn't just destroy goats, so it's pretty cool. Royal Assassin. This will make opponents think twice before tapping their creatures down. Rush of Dread. This does a bunch of wonderfully horrible things. Shriekmaw. This creature is difficult to block and it kills a non-black, non-artifact creature. Or if you don't want the creature, it can basically be terror. And Zat's Will. This kills your opponent's biggest creature, and if your commander is out, it also exiles all of your opponent's graveyards and gives you a number of 0/1 black thralls equal to the power of the biggest creature that was exiled. The vast majority of creatures in this deck either kill creatures by entering the battlefield or by dealing combat damage to them. In this category, I leaned toward flying Deathtouchers to make absolutely sure everyone thinks twice before attacking me. It's like a poisonous pillow fort. Battlefly Swarm. I didn't really want to put in creatures that you have to jump through any hoops to give them Deathtouch, but for this one I figured it's cheap and it has flying, so it's worth it. Bone Picker. If you kill something, part of what you paid to do it goes into the mana cost of this bird. Goring Warplow. This is good early game or late game. There's not a whole lot of difference creature killing wise between a 1/1 with Deathtouch and a 5/4 with Deathtouch when neither of them has trample. I guess the 5/4 is more likely to survive a chump block. Hooded Blightfang. This helps out all of your Deathtouchers, making them drain your opponent's life and making them deadly to planeswalkers. Malakir Familiar. This flies, Deathtouches, and gets bigger when you gain life. Scream Puff. People won't really want to block this since it has Deathtouch, but if they don't, you get some food. Vampire Nighthawk. Flying, Deathtouch, and lifelink on this creature only raises its mana cost by 1 beyond what you would expect to pay for a 2-power creature, which is a nice value. Vengeful Reaper. With Foretell, you can cast this creature on turn 2 or 3, but any creature with flying and Deathtouch and power 1 or more will discourage all attacks against you. It won't guarantee that you'll be left alone, but it helps a lot. Vorpal Sword. If you cast this and equip it in the same turn, it's 3 mana to give a creature +2/+0 and Deathtouch. That's a pretty good deal. Later on, it can even win you the game, or at least force blocks. Writhing Necromass. This beefy creature is pretty expensive unless you have a full graveyard, but that could very well happen if people don't mind giving up their creatures to take out your Deathtouchers. I originally intended for this to be a simple deck for beginners, but I guess this category turns it into something a bit more advanced. You'll have to remember these cards' triggers to get the most out of them, but you can handle it. I believe in you. Agent of the Iron Throne. It hurts your opponents every time you eat food. Blood Artist. This guy drains somebody whenever a creature dies, be it yours or someone else's. Death Tyrant. This menacing beholder skeleton will disincentivize people even more from attacking you and add to the triggers when creatures die. Then, even if they manage to kill this creature, you can easily bring it back for 6 mana. Diamond Mare. I figured since this deck makes food that gives life, I might as well put this in to give even more life. Disciple of the Vault. This creature must be an agent of the Iron Throne because it does almost the same thing. The only difference is that with Disciple, making an opponent lose life is voluntary, so don't forget that trigger. Epicure of Blood. This guy is an honorary agent of the Iron Throne. When you gain life, he hurts each opponent, and that will happen quite a bit with all the food you'll be getting from Flitterfang's garden that is absolutely not a pile of rotting corpses. Well, I guess that's what soil is, but you get the joke I'm making, right? Experimental Confectioner. This is a surprisingly expensive card, especially for an uncommon. That's probably because of the combos it enables. Whenever you eat, a rat that can't block pops out. And with Flitterfang, whenever that rat dies, you get a food at the end of the turn. This makes them good sacrifice material. Marauding Blight Priest. Like Epicure of Blood, this vampire cleric hurts your opponents when you gain life. Mirkwood Bats. Of course this would have to be in here. Whenever you eat food, your opponents get hurt. By itself it's not that bad, but there are a few cards in this category that do things like this, as you've seen. Together they pack a punch. Morbid Opportunist. As you're killing creatures, this provides you with an extra card. Nadir's Nightblade. This drains your opponents whenever you eat food. Ogre Slumlord. This guy is cool because he gives you rats whenever any other creature dies, and he gives rats Deathtouch to help more creatures die. Silver Smoke Ghoul. This guy likes to die to give you cards and come back at the end of any turn where you ate food. And Vrock. If this guy sees one of your permanents leave the battlefield, he hits your opponents for 3 at the end of the turn. That includes food tokens, so be sure to eat the fresh vegetables from Flitterfang's garden. This deck is full of pretty menacing creatures, so I figured it might help to put in some ways to get them back if they're killed. Cauldron's Gift. Quest for the Necropolis. You'll have to wait for this enchantment to gain enough quest counters to make its activated ability cheap enough to use, but by the time you need it, there's a good chance it'll only cost a black. Rescue from the Underworld. This is good if you have a creature that kills something when it enters the battlefield in your graveyard and another one on the battlefield. You'll get 2 triggers, kill 2 creatures, and get a food from Flitterfang's Gourmet Kitchen. Rise Again. This is just a plain white bread resurrection spell, but it could still come in handy. And Victimize. This is my favorite resurrection spell. Sacrifice 1 creature to get 2 back onto the battlefield tapped. It's so good. I didn't put in many draw spells. The ones that are here are meant for later in the game when you have a lot of mana but not a lot of cards in your hand. Cut of the Prophets. If you sacrifice a creature with power 3 or more as you cast this, you copy it, and the copy has the same X value as the original spell. And with all the food you've been eating throughout the game, you should have life to spare. And Damnable Pact. This doesn't give you the casualty option, but it does give you the option to target a player other than you. It could be an interesting way to finish somebody off, either by reducing their life to 0, or by making them draw more cards than are in their library. Crypt Rats. Some rats cook you delicious food, and some wipe the board. These ones also deal damage to all players, which you should be able to handle better than they can. Defiler of Flesh. This makes your black permanents cheaper to cast by replacing one of the black pips with 2 life. And since there are way more permanent spells in this deck than non-permanents, this will help you out a lot. Glass Cast Heart. This artifact is a self-contained combo. It cheaply creates vampires with lifelink, it gives you blood tokens when they attack, and it can blow up once you have enough blood tokens and hurts everybody but you for 13 and gives you 13 life. Gothmog Morgul Lieutenant. This is one of 2 creatures in this deck that gives your rat tokens Deathtouch. It also creates an Orc Army token and gives it Deathtouch. Grey Merchant of Asphodel. This is a finisher. Once you have a lot of black mana pips on the battlefield, he comes out, blows up your opponents, and gives you their life points. Necrosavant. This is a hard creature to get rid of. It can keep coming back from the graveyard for just 5 mana and sacrificing a creature. Nirkana Revenant. This isn't the version of the card that I have, but I don't feel like going back and changing it. This doubles the mana output of your swamps and pumps itself up. Persistent Specimen. This skeleton isn't as big as Necrosavant, but it's cheaper to bring back from the dead. Wrathy Trapper. This is here to combo with Royal Assassin. He taps creatures down, and the assassin takes them out. Reassembling Skeleton. This is even cheaper to bring back than Persistent Specimen. It's one of the best creatures to sacrifice. And the Book of Vile Darkness, Eye of Vecna, and Hand of Vecna. Each of these cards individually helps this deck out, especially the book, but together they make a pretty cool creature. Black is surprisingly good at ramping, though it tends to do it at a cost. Bogwitch. This creature turns every card in your hand into a potential Dark Ritual. Dark Ritual. A member of the Boon Cycle, this gives you 3 black mana for 1 black mana. The other cards in the cycle are Healing Salve, Ancestral Recall, Lightning Bolt, and Giant Growth. The original plan was for black to be the color of mana ramp, but it didn't exactly work out that way. Heraldic Banner. You should choose black for this in this deck. Idol of False Gods. Here's another card that cheaply pumps out creature tokens, and these tokens pay back one of the mana that was used to create them. As they do that, you get all the triggers from whatever other cards you have out that do stuff when creatures die or are sacrificed, and the idol here gets counters too, and eventually becomes something quite spooky. Treasure Dredger. This creature gives you treasure in exchange for your life, just like your real life job does. Undercity Scrounger. This gives you treasure in exchange for other people's lives, just like how it works with the CEO of the company you work for. And Vesper Ghoul. Unlike green mana dorks, black mana dorks tend to require a bit more than tapping to give you mana, but you should have some to spare from all those food tokens. Because of Idol of False Gods, I made sure to put in a good number of lands that produce colorless mana. We got Swamps, of course, Barren Moor, Blighted Fen, Captivating Cave, Conduit Pylons, Desert of the Glorified, Hagra Mauling / Hagra Broodpit. If you don't need the land, you can just kill something instead. Haunted Fengraf, Hidden Necropolis, Mishra's Factory, Mortuary Mire, Myriad Landscape, Nesting Grounds, Pit of Offerings, Radiant Fountain, The Grey Havens, and Witch's Cottage. And that is it. That is Old Flitterfang, a deck that was supposed to be super simple for beginners, but maybe it's not. But I don't know. I'm going to try it out sometime, and you can too if you want to. And I will see you next time.